Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to talk to you about a project we've been working on very recently, actually, but it's a rebuild of a project that had started a little while ago that was looking at the role and the impacts of the arts in research universities, trying to understand the experiences of undergraduates, of faculty and staff, and how the arts impacted their time learning and teaching and in doing research. Part of the challenge of that project was it involved an enormous number of interviews that we had to make sense of, and that really started and drove this project. Before I get these are just some of the sponsors and a great team that I've been working with and have been rebuilding the last year, particularly with support from the Initiative for Democracy and Civic Empowerment. This project has really been able to kick back off. The other place that started is I used to work as a public opinion survey research director and looking at climate issues around the U.S. And I got very disenamored, I guess I would say, with how flat sort of Likert scale surveys treat public opinion. And so, and we were looking at how to engage Americans around climate as sort of a pressing, important issue. And particularly in their relationships with emerging technologies and with ambivalence, the positives and negatives that they might be experiencing, both from policies or new adaptive uses of maladaptive uses of technology. And so I started to think about how we might be able to not only collect but treat those data, those opinions and those perspectives a little bit more carefully. This sort of tension goes back about 100 years or more in the history of public opinion research, in debates about the role of measurement or static of public opinion versus public opinion as a more dialogic or a process of communication and inquiry. And you see this in sort of some of the tension between sort of simple questions that have fixed responses versus more open-ended responses that survey researchers or interviewers might gather. It also it's also motivated by a body of literature from science and technology studies that looks at and tries to understand controversies and perspectives around big societal issues and challenges of infrastructure or science or technology as matters of concern, not just a matter of what's true about the world from an empirical perspective. And lastly, there's another body of literature that's driving this is trying to understand what kinds of how people reason in terms of categories, how they put categories together, and what that means for what we can do in terms of negotiation, what we can do in terms of conflict mitigation, and how we learn to collaborate and do oftentimes work across disciplines, work across different policies, and work across different kinds of issues. So what I'm going to just describe to you is a series of values that we've tried to build into this work that we've been doing. And one of them is just simply to try to make a kind of appliance, something that does something well, like make toast, and not try to do a whole lot, but to provide some simple tuning that maybe makes it more well done or less well done, as the case may be. And we think this is really important for users of this work to be able to, in this case, pull together large numbers of responses, of stories, of documents, of abstracts, whatever that might be, and make sense of them in a fluid, clear way that can be used for immediate use. Which is what we want it to be ready for, is ready for use, ready to be fit into workflows. For example, if you're thinking about municipal office. Here in Ann Arbor, we have the Office of Sustainability and Innovations. It's trying to think about adoption of cleaner, renewable energy sources and all kinds of policy and programs. They're trying to understand, among other things, what some of the challenges that residents in Ann Arbor might be facing around that. But we also want to fit that into the kind of workflow that might come up around workshops that are being developed around the kinds of deliberative processes that analysts might go through with their program designers as they're thinking about how they communicate, how they design programs, and how they interface with others. We want these accounts of responses to be in dialogue. We want them perhaps not to be sort of final or create closure. We want inquiry, we want participation, and so we want some kind of structure that's going to help us do that in such a way that things might be open to revision, but we can also have a conversation about what they mean. And I work in an area of research development here at the University of Michigan. And so one of the things that we often find ourselves challenged with is making sense of perspectives from multiple faculty who are trying to collaborate, who have different ideas, students as well. And we want to be able to feed that back in a way that is timely. And so, for example, if I were to try to gather perspectives from everyone in this room, I would not want to take that home, spend a few weeks trying to code that, and then maybe a few weeks later send an email around that. What I would like to do is I would like to be able to feed that back to you in a way that we can have a dialogue while we're here, while we're ready to engage on that topic. We want to also be able to create formats for different use, and so we want to be able to embed it into practice. People want to be able to take these, use these in different kinds of workshops, put them into presentations, build slides out of them, share them with others out there in the world. And so a big part of this is potentially moving it out of just the role of the analyst or someone who's doing the technical work as well, but to be able to share. Importantly, we want to create a link between the interpretation and the categories to the source data that are being used. For a number of reasons. One, it provides context. Two, it provides a measure of trust in the sense that the way that we're interpreting this is somehow tied, somehow linked to the source data from which it's coming from. We want it to be fairly lightweight. We want something. We don't want this to be difficult to learn. We don't want this to be challenging to deploy in a variety of ways, and so we're trying to make an application essentially that moves pretty quickly and easily for those who might use it. Perhaps most importantly, and I think this is one of the things we oftentimes miss as we're doing work around sense making in organizations to try to pull together ideas and concepts, is that to make it visual so that there's a shared mental model or a shared framework for how we can collaborate together. There's this metaphor that's often used about a variety people trying to grasp different parts of the element, and they can't see. And one person has a tail, one person has a toe, one person has a trunk, and so it's hard to make sense that it's an elephant. So they're trying to make sense of that and see what it can be. But if we allow ourselves to put those pieces together, we start to get a better mental model of what the whole picture of what we're trying to collaborate around entails. In terms of visualization, I think trees are a really common resource for that because they show relationships. They show hierarchy, and you can see how categories are somehow grounded to each other and how they relate to each other and how they might be connected. And in those trees, we can also show weight and proportion. We can show how different categories show up relative to others. And we capture this in terms of the probability or the proportion of different topics or categories in the data set that we're looking at. We want these categories, we want these concepts, we want these issues to come across as being meaningful. We don't want them to be a collection of, say, keywords that people still have to put a lot of meaning or reasoning around in order to make sense of that. We want them to have some sort of concrete grounding from which to begin to have a conversation that can show the complexity of the issues that are involved. And as I mentioned before, also it provides context. So part of what we're building is an application that takes all of these responses together, quickly processes them, makes sense of them, provides labels, and provides summary descriptions so that you can navigate a variety of issues. This is a map of issues, the most important issues to citizens in Ann Arbor from a survey that was collected in 2007 by the city. And what you can see is everything from community safety measures to affordable housing to tax reduction and the whole gamut. Many of these are currently floating around still today. In recent years, they haven't collected open-ended responses as part of these surveys, nor have analyzed them. And part of that, I'm guessing, and I have an outstanding email out to folks to try to pin this down, is that it's difficult. It's difficult to collect, it's difficult to process, it's difficult to analyze, and it's difficult to communicate. And so a big part of what we're trying to do then is just make it a little bit more legible to process those data, to label them, to be able to tell the stories, and then have conversations, to bring those issues and concepts into working groups who might be able to make more sense of them and move them forward in different ways. And as I mentioned previously, these are traceable. So every tree that's generated from a data set also comes from the also links to in the browser to the source documents, so that you can go through and you can browse and examine which documents, or excuse me, which responses relate to which topic effectively. To be able to understand context, to be able to understand the different frames in which people are describing that, to begin to articulate their how it's positive, how it's negative, what kinds of issues might be linked up with that as well, and how they're thinking about it. And I think that's a critical part for any group that's trying to tackle with these issues, because therein lies many, oftentimes, I don't want to call them solutions, but opportunities for further engagement, opportunities for problem solving, opportunities for really getting engaged with the issues that people are facing. We're trying to think about how this fits into a lot of different cases. So it's everything from programmed assessment, which I've been describing, but also survey research, public engagement in terms of communications and kinds of marketing activities. I work in research development, so again, we're oftentimes dealing with everything from proposal abstracts to making sense of all of the ways in which people are trying to understand an emerging research domain, down to even innovation and the kinds of inventions that we might be creating. What's the gamut of what we're seeing that's out there, to try to use that as a way to understand some of the relationships and some of the possibilities even for innovation that might be out there. So I invite you to, the latest build is listed right there, and if you have any comments or questions, I welcome you to take a look. There's a sample data source that you can upload, that you can open and browse and explore, and you can get a sense for how it works. And if you'd like to follow up in any way, we're looking for collaborators, partners, whatever it might be. So be really thrilled to have a chat with you more about this. My email's there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very interesting talk. Use this as a reminder for those of you who may have come in late that there is the QR code in your program or on your table, and you can submit your questions to Pigeonhole, or you're welcome to come up to the mic here. One question we have asks how the system handles cultural biases in responses. For example, with rating surveys, some countries have been observed to prefer extreme values on those Likert scales.
Mm-hmm. Part of what I think is built into the process is that those extreme biases that might come up in responses may show up as responses, but may not overwhelm or may not be the only responses that are there, if I'm understanding the question correctly. And so I think part of the idea for us is to be able to see those responses relative to the other responses so that we have some sense of where that proportion might exist relative to the others. And I think that's an important part of that, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, thank you. You had mentioned how in the survey it's difficult to collect open-ended responses. How would you imagine AI being able to assist in the collection of open-ended responses?
It's a great question. I haven't thought about that in detail yet. I would have to think about that a little bit more. I mean, that's really the most important part of all of this, is how you gather responses, and it's not easy. It's difficult. I think many of you in this room have probably taught students and asked them to write essays on things, and that's sometimes a challenge. Getting folks to have the opportunity to articulate a point of view and a response and give it the time and attention to get something meaningful out of that takes time and energy. And so that's a non-trivial step, but it's important. And I'm not sure yet that that's something that we want to, but I think that's something that actually is really important to spend the majority of our time and labor on, so that we can get to the point where we start arguing about what those responses mean, which is, I think, what's important for us to then go back to those who are responding with a sense of, here's what we think we heard, and how can we use that to design better programs, think about policy implementation a little bit better, how we're designing our cities, our streets, our housing, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, thank you. Our results are only as good as our data collected. So I think that speaks to that. Our results are only as good as the data we collect. Yeah. So I think that speaks to that. We have time for one more quick question. How do you overcome low survey data? So far for this, it only really makes sense once we start to get up to, I'm gonna say, back of the envelope, about 80 responses or so. Because under sort of less than that, it starts to be something that we can do almost by hand. And a big part of this is to help get beyond what you can do, when an individual might be able to do in their working memory, sitting down, sorting through this in an hour or so. And so the value of it increases with many more responses. And some of the data sets, whether it's issues in neighborhoods that came through the 411 system in the city of Detroit, there's about 4,000 responses there. For the undergraduates, talking about their experiences with the arts here at University of Michigan, that's about 4,000 responses across different cohorts. But yeah, when we start to get under 100, about 50, it starts to become less critical. Although I see the system works for so far as few as about 40, so it's useful in that sense, and it may be useful for just quickly sort of prototyping and getting a sense of the data, much as you would with other kinds of statistical software, and exploring some of the patterns that might pop up. Great, thank you so much. Thank you. Gabriel Harp.
Good morning, everyone. Today, our team is very excited to share our research vision on human AI co-evolution in future Industry 5.0 manufacturing systems. So this talk will focus on how we can design next generation of AI system for industry, and how we can work around people and co-evolve with people for these AI systems. So before we begin, I want to briefly talk about our team. So I'm Chenhui. I'm from mechanical engineering. I work on smart manufacturing, AI for manufacturing applications. So joining me are my colleagues from Economic Growth Institute, Ashlee Breitner and Mengjian Li from EGI. So they work with a lot of manufacturers locally and also nationally. So we get a lot of insights directly informed from the conversation from many of the manufacturers. So you see why we have this team, why we work on this together. It makes sense because we cover manufacturing AI and also workforce and organizations. It's really interdisciplinary work. So here's the outline for the talk. So we start with the big picture, and then talk about AI in manufacturing, and then we'll dive into the challenges induced by workforce and around workforce. And after that, we'll present our human AI collaboration framework and how this can, be situated into Industry 5.0 system. And finally, we talk about a roadmap and conclude the talk. So let's start with the big picture. I guess everybody in this room knows manufacturing. Right? Manufacturing is about making stuff. So manufacturing is a big industry not only in the U.S. but also in the whole entire world. So actually, it's predicted by 2030 this market will reach $155 billion, and this number is still is getting maybe conservative estimate because we are seeing so many AI applications every day, right? And here in the USA, so 52% of manufacturers, they report that they are already using AI in some operations at some level. And more importantly, 87% of our manufacturers in the US, they say that it's important for policymakers to understand how manufacturing uses AI, because the decisions that we make today around AI, well, we still can before AI takes over the world and make decisions for us, may shape the future of not only manufacturing but also for the future of human beings. So very briefly, AI in manufacturing is not a future thing. It's happening every day. Actually, many manufacturers are using AI in their daily operations. So AI can help us manufacturers with many tasks. For example, they can do generative design, they can do automation, inventory management, so on and so forth. And more recently, people have been talking about the large language models, and actually some major companies are starting to use large language models like copilots for supporting decision-making on the factory floor. So AI obviously is helping manufacturers in many different ways. For example, it enables faster, smarter design, it improves quality, and it can help do predictive maintenance, so on and so forth. But those examples highlight AI's potential, but we argue that to fully realize the potential of AI in manufacturing not only depends on the technology, meaning the algorithms, the data, the code, but also it depends on the people and organizations around AI or who actually use AI in their operations. So I want to show one example to actually illustrate what I mean by saying people matter in this journey. So a lot of my research is about computer vision for manufacturing. I have students here in this room, they all work on computer vision at some level. So computer vision for part inspection has been a very popular area, not only in R&D, but also many vendors, including this leading metrology system company that's been developing different systems for computer vision. Let's say they can use it for part qualification. So in all matters, it promises all the good things. It can give you higher consistency. It can reduce manual work. It can also enable faster throughput. But in reality, this may not be always true. Actually, oftentimes, this is not true. So there are several key gaps. First of all, computer vision systems are often developed without shop floor worker input. So in business, those are normally provided by a company who specialize in optics and computer vision software. So those people, they may not necessarily understand the manufacturing problem on the factory floor. So a lot of times, those systems are developed in silo without even consulting the workers who actually use the system on the factory floor. And the second, which is a key technical challenge, is about the factory environment being very diverse and very dynamic. So you develop some systems in the lab environment, so those systems may feel very badly in the actual factory floor, which can be very noisy, very messy. And third, because of all the gaps, right? So those systems, you can imagine, can give you a lot of false alarms or misdetections. So this actually will not improve efficiency, but instead, it'll give you more work, more rework. It slows down production and actually add more labor burden to our manufacturers. So with all of these challenges, you can naturally expect that our operators on the factory floor, they may override or even ignore alerts. So there's a trust issue, right? People may not trust the AI. So that actually leads to a lot of failure cases in the manufacturing, in the manufacturing industry. So why these failures occur? So we've been talking to our collaborator, for example, from General Motors. So those failures occur because of several major reasons. For example, there's a misalignment in developing the AI systems, and also there's a missing human factors. So meaning human factors are not being considered sufficiently in the system. And the third, of course, because of the gaps, we're getting trust issue and resistance, so which leads to better, actual worse issues, right? So the message here is that we are trying to tell a bigger truth. So these failures are not about model accuracy. Those are beyond AI, beyond code, beyond software and computers. They are more about humans, organizational, and workflow challenges that shape AI use, and those actually gives you the condition for making AI work. So now I think it's nice to hand it over to my colleague Ashlee to talk about the workforce challenges.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My team at the Economic Growth Institute is an outward-facing unit here at the university that really works to leverage the resources here to support particularly small to medium-sized manufacturers, so that we very much have a boots-on-the-ground approach to working right alongside these manufacturing partners. The data you'll see here on the screen, over the last few years, the state of Michigan's administered a grant program supporting small to medium-sized manufacturers in working to implement Industry 4.0 technologies. And so when we ask them their why are you applying for this funding? Really, resoundingly, we hear consistent themes. The main driver there is a heavy reliance on manual labor. So those very repetitive tasks within the manufacturing floor, they're really looking to eliminate those with utilization of technology. Second, they're struggling to hire and retain workers. When we ask owners of small manufacturers that we work with daily, what keeps you up at night? Workforce is consistently rising to the top. If they can hire the workers, the retention is then the second challenge that they face for many, many reasons today. At the same time, manufacturers want to improve job quality and create safer, better environments for their manufacturing employees. And finally, ultimately, there is a major aging workforce and shallower talent pipelines facing our manufacturing sector. So looking to help support grow careers in advanced technology and integration of these tools is critical. But the key takeaway there is these same workforce pressures that small manufacturers face when it comes to implementing Industry 4.0 technology really pushes the firms towards AI, but also creates major challenges when they look to try to adopt it. With that tension is what we want to explore as we think about the future of AI in the manufacturing environment. So what are some of those challenges when we think about the workforce integration in AI and small manufacturers in particular? There are a series of major challenges, and we're going to continue to discover more as more integrations does start to happen. First and foremost, misalignment or misalignment of development. As was mentioned already, we have an opportunity there that there's major gaps in who's developing the system and who is actually utilizing the system. So challenges there, human factors. The workflow that's being developed doesn't always fit the manufacturing floor operations, which sometimes is often creating challenges, additional challenges for their workers as opposed to increasing and supporting their capacity. You'd be surprised how many manufacturers we walk in today, and a lot of their systems are still paper-based. So creating data to support the systems when it doesn't exist in a format that's structured is our reality. Also, interoperability gaps. So when the workers on the floor don't necessarily understand the decisions that are being made behind the tools, they have a challenge with trusting the tools. And then as soon as a mistake is made, that trust is lost and they create workarounds. So all of this leads to a major conclusion, though, is AI adoption in manufacturing is fundamentally a human challenge, not just necessarily a technical one.
Right, so because of all of the challenges that we identified, we believe that human AI co-evolution is really the future for manufacturing AI adoption. But we have identified a couple of research gaps in this area. So first of all, of course, AI development and practice in today's manufacturing is often fragmented. Also in the research area, people study AI and manufacturing in silo, like they don't actually integrate their findings, or they miss the big picture or miss a few layers in the framework. And second, the existing studies about human complementary AI have more been about areas of healthcare or services, but not in manufacturing. And we believe that this framework on the right side, you can see on the slide, will actually be a new framework for human AI co-evolution in manufacturing. We believe that several key requirements have to be met. So first of all, we need to understand how AI systems and multiple human actors, including organizations, workers, AI developer, and leadership, how they co-evolve over time continuously. And second, we need to adopt a cross-level multidimensional view because you cannot study any one of these components individually. You need to see the big picture. You need to see the connections. And third, integrating findings from different disciplines, like I mentioned about the labor studies, manufacturing AI. It's truly an interdisciplinary endeavor. And finally, we want to investigate and also track the outcomes of this framework. For example, what is job quality, and what is the efficiency improvement, and what is the revenue being made out of this AI adoption. So more specifically, this chart here shows 4 interactions between human and AI, and cognitive, behavioral, structural, and relational. So we want to answer many different questions here. For example, in the cognitive dimension, we want to understand how trust and distrust form and how they change over time. And in structure, we need to understand how AI reshapes skills, jobs, and organizations. In behavior, we need to understand the individual behaviors of workers in this journey. And finally, relational, how AI adoption changes the current workforce dynamics. So now let's put this framework into the Industry 5.0 manufacturing concept. So Industry 4.0 is still being debated whether we have done it yet. But now people are talking about Industry 5.0, so what's new here? So it's really about human-centered manufacturing. It's about resilience and sustainability and human-centric manufacturing. So when we talk about worker empowerment and enabling more collaboration between humans and machines, humans, robots, and human and AI, so we believe that this actually provides a perfect platform for adopting human AI co-evolution framework in manufacturing. So there are many different questions to be answered. For example, the human-centered AI, trust, cognition, so on and so forth. But we believe that we need to study this cross-level and holistic manner. We need the shared efforts, interdisciplinary research, strong partnership, and also R&D investment. Okay, so I conclude here. So really, with this 15-minute presentation, I'm really trying to give you 2 messages. One, AI in manufacturing is accelerating, but its success depends on people, organizations, and ecosystems, not only about AI itself. And second, the future of manufacturing is human AI co-evolution. And we have a simple recipe. Manufacturing plus AI plus workforce and plus organizations is equal to co-evolution. And thank you. I think I'm right on time. Thank you.
Thank you both for that fascinating talk. We've got a number of questions here, starting with, does AI in manufacturing suffer from errors comparable to hallucinations of LLMs? How much human supervision is needed to assure quality?
That's an interesting question. So before this session, I just had a meeting with General Motors, talking about similar topic. So sorry, it's confidential, but so it's true. So LLM is not performing as well as in our daily tasks, like writing emails and working on code. In manufacturing, we have a lot of complicated scenarios that these AI agents have not been exposed to. So they may hallucinate, they may give you wrong answers, they may even mislead you in the decision-making process. You can tell that this promise of AI, especially generative AI in manufacturing, is still very nascent. I think there's a lot more developments are needed. I guess not only from the AI alone, but also again, how do we put the human knowledge, abstraction of human knowledge into the development process? I guess that is something, my colleague and we've been talking about cognitive AI, right? How to abstract human knowledge into this AI development. I guess in manufacturing, particularly, on a job shop, there are engineers working there for 50 years. They have a lot of knowledge in their head, but there's no way to properly digitize and learn from this knowledge. I guess that can be an interesting area to explore. Again, we need support from computer scientists, who are interested in manufacturing programs, and also from the manufacturers who are willing to collaborate. Manufacturers are not a good area for sharing data. No data is shareable in manufacturing. Basically, I guess that is another practical challenge there.
Great, thank you for that. So how can manufacturing workers actively participate in the integration of AI technologies, even when they may perceive these systems as potential threats to their own job security?
So I guess, Ashlee, do you want to address this?
Sure.
It's more like workforce.
Yeah, the first thing, how they can participate is to help experiment with the solutions. You're right. There's a huge fear that it's going to replace their jobs, right? For many workers. But the more we can educate them on the value of it, the more they can help to be part of the design of the solution, the better buy-in that they're going to have at the end of the day to utilizing the tool long term. So we have to help make sure that we're designing the solution, designing the tool with the actual people that are going to operate it involved in the process, as opposed to designing the tool and handing it to them and expecting that they're gonna buy in.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more quick question. So is AI more used for these complex or intelligent tasks, or the simpler, routine, boring tasks within manufacturing?
I think as of now in manufacturing, it's good for the boring tasks, smaller tasks, I would say. Because for smaller tasks, for example, for, let's say, in situ monitoring of the process, it's very controlled. The data types are consistent. The signals are relatively stable. So it's easier to train the powerful AI model for performing such tasks. For anything more like creative or complicated, involving multiple as a process and operations, so AI starts to fail because when they start making small mistakes here and there, those errors will aggregate into a big error for the final decision-making task. So as of today, is for smaller, simpler tasks. But again, for the smaller, simpler tasks, people can do it too, right? While doing the AI. Again, it comes back to the question of what is the role of AI in supporting people, or what is it's not replacing people, but how does AI can help people, improve their job quality, but meanwhile, does not sacrifice the performance of the manufacturing.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Shao and Ashlee.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is my lab, and they do all the things, and I get to talk to it about. So here, Mohammed, who is a postdoctoral fellow, and Renju, who is a research scientist in the lab, who are working in our lab to develop this portfolio where we are trying to kind of leverage AI, ML, platform to do further discovery in our lab. We are a natural product drug discovery lab. So by far, this is the most friendly audience I will have when I start talking about AI, because when I go to my global health symposium and whatnot, they're like, you are using so much energy out there. So I'm like, okay, sure, why not? Okay, so I'm going to talk about a little bit an important factor in any of the medicine which we take, which is chirality. Any molecule which we take in our drug has to have right istio 3D conformers. And that 3D conformation can lead to multiple issues, more bad and good. And I will show you examples. Drug chirality over here, this is thalidomide. It was introduced in 80s basically for morning sickness, only to figure out that this is causing teratogenicity, which is basically kids were getting born without limb, without arms and whatnot. So it became a huge problem. Later, only to find out that the problem is because of the R to S stereochemistry. So this one was the right conformer or stereochemistry. This one was the bad stereochemistry. And the drug which was getting manufactured was a racemic mixture. You're going to hear this term a lot from me. So it was racemic mixture, which is basically combination of both these two drugs together in the drug, so which was causing it. So of course it got after all the uproar and scientific information, basically it got resolved, and now we still have got this drug in market. Furthermore, it's not only about the bad effect of it. If you see lots of these drugs, which is basically available, currently being used in clinic, from citalopram to cetirizine, which we all of us we get. You can see that this is basically the racemic mixture, and this is the pure enantiomer, which is actually the drug entity. What it ends up happening is that when you have a pure drug enantiomer purity, the efficiency of that molecule becomes better, and of course you get better drugs. So why am I talking about it? So we are in the era of where lots and lots of our drug are getting, like patents are getting expired, and lots of these generic companies are coming up which are making these molecules, and if there is any drop in the overall development or the enantiomer purity, you will see that lots of these generic drugs may have these racemic mixture in whatever concentration, 8 to 2, 8 to 1, because it makes it cheaper. I'm telling you, it's a lot more expensive to go from here to here just because you have to get the purity right. So basically, there's lots of drug counterfeits, which is happening because of this. So as you can see, these are all the drugs which was approved in 2022. I've got a list for all of them, but it was no point in showing. And all these drugs have got so many stereo centers. And add to that the this particular development or data presented by Interpol is basically what it is showing is lots of these counterfeits are being developed where a molecule is not pure and it is introduced in the market in generic form. I can give you example of India. There is a report where in India they have reported that 40 to 60% of the generic drugs which are available are not enantiomer pure, basically ending up giving drugs which are not as effective as it should have been. Also, we do not know what is the downstream effect of it anyways. So there is lots of not only clinical usage of it, but also counterfeit argument about figuring out a methodology which is faster, quicker to figure out if these are enantiomer pure molecules or not from any drug uses. So now with that in hand, what are the current technologies available? So this is one of our project in the lab, which we published last 2 years back, which basically gave us the idea. The project was different, completely nothing to do with DeepChiral. The project was, can we find a novel natural product-based drug against cancer, which targeting EIF4E gene, which is an oncogenic gene. And when we started looking into this, we performed screen and whatnot, and we identified molecules. And very quickly, we figured out that not the process bias, but basically we saw a difference in activity of molecules of same class, and we figured out that this pure, there are two enantiomeric entities which are showing completely different activities. Add to that, when we started doing literature, it was like, oh, there's nobody who has got any established mechanism in suggesting that this is the molecule, right? This is the right enantiomeric molecule. I'm like, okay, what's going on over here? How they came up? So basically, everybody just reported the structure of it and said, well, this is the most probable in stereochemistry at this position this position basically, and position and availability of hydroxyl group at this point. Now this whole process of us, so what we ended up doing is we not only isolated the metabolite, we performed NMR to get the structure of it, HPLC to purify the molecule, performed spectroscopy, tried X-ray, did not work, ended up doing using ECD coupled with NMR to figure out the actual stereochemistry, and we corrected all the wrong structures published in the literature. Now, when we finished this work, it took us 1.5 years. So like, this is not sustainable. And then add to the problem which I was talking about in previous slides, right? So how can we make it better? So that's when we started developing this DeepChiral. The idea is that the way in which ECD works, electronic circular dichroism, is when you have a molecule, you have to get several simulations done on each stereocenters to come up with a what you call probable this spectra of the molecule. It is lot of computational intensive work, and of course, it's not that readily understandable knowledge. So you will not see that much of it getting used. So once we have that, then you collect basically CD spectra and compare what is the best match, and then based on that, in this case, we got 2 best matches over here, and then we confirmed it with NMR further to come up with the structure. So now it took us long time to figure this thing out, and we thought, can we develop a technology where we can first curate data set of all these available entities, come up with a ECD spectra, and then start predicting ECD spectra and come up with this method where we can proactively get to the actual right ECD spectra, and you can compare it with actual ECD. And what is of course it will. So we started acquiring experimental data, and we started getting calculated data match. This is our initial data sets, which we started acquiring on complex molecule, which is very hard to kind of like come up with the experimental data and calculated data to basically validate the cycle. This is the one of the concept paper which was published from China in Nature Computational Science this year itself. So we got beaten by a little bit by this group, but the only difference between us, not only difference, a lot of difference between us and them is they are using synthetic data and we are using actual data. So their data, in fact, we probed their data, and there are so many wrong molecules. Think about it. What did I tell you earlier? We corrected so many structures by utilizing our method. They are using that data to train this data. So it is full of flaw. So basically, we tried a couple of our molecules. In fact, the molecule we published, and it got wrong structure out of it, right? So we are not beaten as we thought initially when we saw this stuff. So now what we are doing is that we are, first thing, we are collecting the data on actual entities. That is our proposal for MIDAS, which we have started doing basically, and then training our data using that data set to come up with a program we call DeepChiral to basically start proactively coming up with this ECD spectra, which can be utilized at any place. So if you're a drug discovery company, you want a pure entity. You can just basically use it at that point. If you are doing clinical point of care assessment where you are getting drugs and you want to check the quality of these generics, you can actually deploy it over there. So there are multiple avenues where you can deploy it. We are trying to develop, and this is our basic solutions. So what we are saying is that first AI platform for rapid, accurate ECD prediction, there's nothing, and which I showed you is not accurate. Second thing is, of course, we are curating ECD database, which is like nothing ever done. It's lots of work for us, but we are taking the bite and going about it to develop this neural engine. Clinical and commercial impact. We can do as many samples as possible, but then it can be deployed for drug discovery and QC, for hit to lead, GMP, FDA submission, batch QC, and as well as when you are using it in clinic. Of course, anti-counterfeit is something which we were not thinking when we initially started working on it, but now we think that this is going to be a perfect match. In fact, we have gotten DARPA awardable status on the program connected to this technology right now. So we are working on developing this as an anti-counterfeit workflow. And with that, basically, I will end my talk, and I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that excellent talk. We do not have someone going over to the mic. So can you talk a little bit more about how you foresee this being used in a clinic setting?
So the way in which so there are instruments available which can collect ECD data, but then that itself is of no use because you get a spectra, but then what is it, right? So when we deploy it alongside that, you know what the spectra you should expect, and you can just compare. So it's basically a minute process. So you have the predicted spectra, and you have the actual spectra, and you match it, and basically you got it. If it's not matching, there's a problem with whatever you are collecting data on.
Great, thank you. We do have one over here now.
Hello, Doctor. Carl Schultz. I'm MBA with the Ross. I'm interested in talking about this. Has there been any thought about applying this to industrial chemicals, for example? I'm a fire chief for the Air Force Base on the east side, and we have a very big problem with PFOS, PFOA at the moment. Do you see a pathway for this same kind of analysis to be applied to these?
Actually, great question. I'm going to be meeting Eva Feldman to convince her to allow us to use this. I'm telling you, the entire field is so adamant about utilizing any new thing that it becomes hard to kind of like when we initially proposed. So they are all into GCMS, basically get GCMS data and then couple it with that, right? We are trying to bring them up into, okay, can we just start doing LCMS on the sample? Even there, they have got hesitance, right? So I'm going to be talking to Eva Feldman exactly about this to allow us to utilize this technology for them and see if it works out. So maybe we'll be able to report to you next time. This is my third time this year I'm talking to MIDAS. So I'm looking for collaborations like that. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Hopefully third time's the charm then. Are there implications for this in drug access and affordability?
Okay, my cynical view about it, you can make drug affordable by not keeping it pure. Is it worth it? I'm not saying I'm anti a cheap drug. What I'm talking about is that if there is cost, if it is a counter argument, then I won't take it. But then can we deploy this technology to make the drug development or basically generic development a lot more streamlined, I think the affordability comes built with safety as well, right? So will it solve the affordability issue? I do not think so, but it will solve the purity issue or the counterfeits which may be introduced to people.
Great, thank you. And we have a similar question here. How accessible and applicable would this be for clinics in developing countries?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
How accessible and applicable would this research be for clinics in developing countries?
Oh, it will be everybody who is using ECD. So what we will try to do is there are basically 3 companies which are making ECD spectrometers, 3 only worldwide. We are not going to be manufacturing for sure, but we are trying to convince them to or we will try to convince them to use this technology and have it inbuilt in the spectrometer itself, which is going to be accessible to anybody who's using ECD in developed or developing countries. So yes, that's the ultimate aim, to have it deployed inbuilt with the instrument itself on licensing basis, of course.
Great, thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more quick one. This is a statement followed by a short question. Marshall McLuhan predicted back in the 1960s, due to the changes in communications and electronic technology, that there would not be IP in the future. Do you have thoughts?
Well, as a natural product chemist, I'm always fighting with IP. So 2015, Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court passed this stuff where no natural product can be IP'd. And then inadvertently, they blocked all the natural products which are being isolated from, it's like small molecule natural products. Believe it or not, more than 50% of the drug which we currently use are based on natural product. But because of that law, now we cannot protect the molecule itself straight up until we make derivative of it with some additional function. So we are always trying to navigate that field. I think we have become a lot more trained into figuring out IP potential over here. Having said that, I would rather have it available as widely as possible than actually IP it out and kind of like just kind of like keep it closed. Because if the problem is so wide world over, I do not know how much that having it IP is going to help us. So in whatever way and mechanism, if we can have some kind of like cost benefit analysis, return on investment and whatnot, and come up with some value where, okay, it's a lot more widely applicable, I would rather take that route. But then we are still developing, so we do not know where we'll end up. I hope I answered the question, but yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tripathi.
Thanks.